Most people think bringing an animal home is harmless, especially when it looks small, lost, or helpless. But some of the most dangerous situations in the world start exactly that way. Across the world, ordinary people have taken in wild animals, fed them, named them, and built their lives around them. What they did not know was that the creature they were nurturing was growing into something they could never fully control. Some of them found out too late. These are 10 real cases where compassion turned into a nightmare. Mary and Rambo. Mary Thorne was walking along a riverbank one day when she spotted a baby alligator alone at the water's edge. No mother in sight, no movement around it, just a small reptile sitting there completely on its own. Most people would have kept walking. Mary picked it up and took it home. That one decision would consume the next 15 years of her life in ways she could never have predicted. She named it Rambo. From that day, she built her entire routine around the animal. She fed it on a strict schedule, trained it consistently, and took it outside regularly. Over time, Rambo began to respond to her voice and recognize her presence in a way that genuinely surprised people who witnessed it. Well, Rambo got his license so that he can stay at home. He will be staying with me forever. Mary treated this alligator with the same level of care and devotion that most people reserve for their own children, and Rambo became the center of her world. Then Rambo grew. After 15 years, the animal had reached 5 feet in length, and that is when the U.S. Forest Department showed up at Mary's front door. Their message was not friendly. They told her the alligator was a public safety risk and that she needed to hand it over immediately. They were not asking. They were telling. Mary looked them in the eye and told them she would rather die than give Rambo up, and she was not being dramatic. She meant it completely. Rather than backing down, she took the government to court and fought a full legal battle to keep her alligator. Incredibly, she won. But the court victory came with a condition that should make anyone stop and think. If Rambo ever attacks a person, Mary is fully and personally responsible under the law. No excuses, no defense, no shared liability. One bad day, one unpredictable moment from a 5-foot alligator, and Mary faces criminal consequences. She accepted those terms without hesitation. That tells you everything you need to know about how far this woman's attachment had gone. Brian's wild rescue. Brian Dirkjack was walking through a remote area of the African wilderness when he came across a small animal on its own. It was tiny, it was vulnerable, and there was no sign of its mother anywhere nearby. Brian assumed it was a stray dog or some kind of wild puppy that had been abandoned. He picked it up, took it home, and started raising it by hand. It was only after he got home and took a closer look that he realized what he had actually brought through his front door. This was not a puppy. This was a hyena cub. By that point, Brian was already attached, so instead of taking it back, he made the decision to keep raising it. For a while, everything seemed fine. He fed the cub, housed it, and spent enough time with it that a genuine bond started to form between them. The hyena was playful and responsive, and it was clearly attached to Brian in a way that surprised everyone who saw them together. It's all like a tiny little baby in your video, right? People who visited could not believe how the animal behaved around him. It was the kind of bond that made Brian feel like he had done something remarkable. But here's what Brian did not fully account for. Hyenas are not dogs. They are not wired for domestication in any way. As the animal grew, something shifted. Its instincts got sharper, its physical strength became harder to manage, and its patience for being confined started running out. A fully grown hyena has one of the strongest bite forces of any land predator alive. It can crush through solid bone the way most animals cannot even get through meat. And unlike animals that attack out of panic or impulse, hyenas are calculating. They observe, they wait, and they act with intention. That makes them significantly more dangerous than an animal that simply charges. Then the hyena attacked him. It was not a warning bite or a moment of rough play that went too far. The animal came at Brian with the full weight of everything it had become, and it was in that moment that Brian finally understood what he was actually dealing with. The bond was real, but it was no longer enough to override what this animal had grown into. He had no choice but to release it back into the wild. He had raised it from a cub, invested years into it, and genuinely cared for it. And in the end, none of that mattered. The hyena had simply outgrown the relationship, and there was nothing Brian could do to change that. Brooklyn's biggest mistake. At 22 years old, Brooklyn Cowrie had everything going for her. A model and a professional skateboarder with major sponsorships, a feature in Vogue, and a television commercial just weeks away from filming. Her face and her talent were both building something real. And then, in under a minute, everything collapsed. Brooklyn had always loved dogs. Growing up around them had made her completely comfortable with them, the kind of person who never felt the need to be cautious. So when she went to stay with her cousin in Arizona, the pit bull living there immediately caught her attention. Over the days she spent at that house, she and the dog had started to build a real bond. She played with it, spent time around it, and genuinely enjoyed its company. To her, this was just another dog she was falling in love with. She had no idea she was getting attached to something that was about to change her life forever. Then one afternoon, without any warning, something she still cannot identify triggered the dog, and it launched directly at her face. The dog hung off her face for more than 30 seconds, shaking her head like a toy. When it was finally over, the animal's jaws had ripped off her upper lip and parts of her nose. At first, she thought it was just a minor bite, but the true realization quickly set in. In her own words before, I just focused on such little things that didn't even matter. I had a zit on my upper lip right when the attack happened, and I remember being so insecure about it. And then 15 minutes later, my entire lip was gone. The hospital was unable to reattach her upper lip. She went on to undergo 6 reconstructive surgeries. Doctors took skin and nerves from her arm and transplanted them to rebuild a functioning lip. The road was long, painful, and deeply uncertain at every stage. Her modeling career, her commercial, her momentum, all of it stopped the moment that dog made contact with her face. And the detail that makes this story truly hard to shake is that this was not a stray animal or a creature she had never met. It was a dog she had been bonding with in a home she felt completely safe in on an ordinary afternoon. That is what makes it so difficult to process. The birthday surprise. A man came across an injured honey badger and decided to rescue it. Around the same time, his wife's birthday was coming up, and he thought bringing the animal home as a gift would be a fun and memorable surprise. His wife loved it. They named it Gilbert, welcomed it into their home, and started caring for it like any other pet. Neither of them had any real knowledge of what a honey badger actually was. They were about to find out. The Guinness World Records officially list the honey badger as the most fearless animal on the planet. Not the most dangerous. The most fearless. And that distinction matters enormously because an animal with no fear has no limits on what it will engage with, what it will fight, and what it will refuse to back down from, regardless of the size of the threat in front of it. Here is what that looks like in practice. A cobra bite delivers enough venom to kill a full-grown human being within hours. A honey badger gets bitten by a cobra, goes temporarily unconscious, wakes up, and finishes eating the cobra. These animals are immune to most snake venoms, and they have been documented hunting, killing, and consuming black mambas, which are among the fastest and most venomous snakes alive, as a routine part of their diet. Their body is also built in a way that makes them nearly impossible to stop once they decide to fight. The skin of a honey badger is so thick and so loosely attached to its body that when a predator grabs it, the badger can physically rotate inside its own skin and bite back at whatever is holding it. Predators that try to grip it find themselves suddenly on the receiving end of an attack they did not see coming. Gilbert was just the beginning. Over time, the couple added more honey badgers to their home until they were essentially running a colony. The chaos, the destruction, and the danger escalated with every single addition. Bolos and the piglet. In December 2021, a man named Bolos was out in the jungle when he came across a warthog piglet completely on its own. It was small enough to fit in his hands, and there was nothing around it. No mother, no group, nothing. Bolos picked it up and brought it home, folding it into a household that already had several other animals. At that point, it looked like nothing more than a harmless little piglet that needed care. That was the beginning of the problem. The warthog adapted fast. Within weeks, it was moving through the house like it had lived there its entire life, completely unbothered by the other pets around it. It ate with them, moved around them, and settled into the household routine without any friction. Bolos watched all of this and felt good about what he had done. He had rescued something helpless and given it a home. What he did not realize was that the animal he had rescued was quietly changing every single day. Because a warthog piglet and a fully grown warthog are two completely different problems. As this animal matured, it developed the physical features that make warthogs one of the most underestimated creatures in the wild. Its tusks began to grow in curved and sharp, and those tusks are not decorative. A warthog uses them to slash upward at the underbellies of lions and leopards when it is cornered, not to defend itself from small threats, from lions, from leopards. The animals that sit at the very top of the food chain actively think twice before going after a fully grown warthog, because the cost of that confrontation is often too high. Many predators simply walk away. On top of that, a warthog can run at 48 kilometers per hour inside an open field that is impressive. Inside a family home, that speed becomes something else entirely. What Bolos thought he was raising was a rescued piglet. What was actually growing inside his home was an animal that apex predators in the wild choose to avoid, and he had no idea. The snake boy of Colombia. A family in rural Colombia found a snake in the field behind their house. Now, Colombia is a country covered in dense rainforest and farmland, and snakes are a regular part of life there. Farmers find them in their fields, in their storage rooms, sometimes even inside their homes. So when this family spotted a snake moving through their crops, they were not panicked. They had seen snakes before. They assumed this was just another one. They were wrong. This was a Burmese python, one of the largest and most dangerous constrictors on the planet, and it was already massive when they found it. At full size, this animal would reach 90 kilograms, heavier than most full-grown men. But here is what makes a Burmese python truly monstrous. It does not use venom. It does not need to. It kills by wrapping its entire body around its prey and squeezing. Every time the animal tries to breathe out, the python tightens its grip just a little more, until eventually the heart cannot beat and the lungs cannot expand. The prey suffocates and is crushed at the same time. These snakes have swallowed fully grown deer. They have constricted and consumed alligators. There are documented cases of Burmese pythons killing and swallowing adult human beings whole, leaving nothing behind. So what did this family do when they found one in their field? They picked it up and brought it inside their home. No call to animal control. No discussion about what this animal was capable of. They carried it in, and from that day, the python lived with them. Their 7-year-old son became attached to it almost immediately. Within a short time, the boy and the snake were completely inseparable. He would sleep beside it at night. He carried it on his shoulders during the day. He took it outside with him when he went to play. Here is the part that is genuinely hard to process. The parents watched all of this and never once stepped in. They never pulled their son away. They never set a single boundary. Every single day, a 7-year-old child who weighed almost nothing was putting himself inside the grip of a 90-kilogram python, and his parents stood by without any visible concern. The python never harmed the boy. Not once. But no expert, no wildlife specialist, and no one who has ever seen this footage has been able to explain why. His parents have come to accept Zambit's appetite for snake affection. That unanswered question is what makes this story so deeply unsettling. The cheetah experiment. A family in South Africa raised 2 cheetahs from birth. From the very beginning, these animals were treated as members of the household. No cage, no leash, no barrier of any kind. The cheetahs ate with the family, moved through the house freely, and went wherever the family went. The children played with them at any time and in any way they wanted. To anyone watching from the outside, it looked like the most extraordinary family setup imaginable. And for a long time it was, cheetahs are the fastest land animals alive. They can accelerate from a complete standstill to 100 kilometers per hour in just 3 seconds, faster than most sports cars on the road. Unlike lions or leopards, they are not typically aggressive toward humans. And the family leaned heavily on that fact to justify the freedom they gave these animals. What they perhaps did not think about carefully enough was that cheetahs are still large wild predators. And wild instinct does not disappear just because an animal grows up around people. It waits. Then one afternoon, something shifted. One of the cheetahs was moving through the yard when it spotted the family's chickens. Everything that had been trained into that animal over years of domestic life disappeared in an instant. The cheetah went after the chickens with the full force of what it actually was, a predator acting entirely on instinct, and it killed several of them before anyone could intervene. It was fast, it was violent, and it was over before the family had any real chance to stop it. The attack was on poultry, but that was not the point. The point was what the family saw in that moment. They saw that the training had a ceiling, and that ceiling was lower than they had believed. These were not domesticated animals. They were wild predators that had simply been comfortable enough not to act on it until now. After that incident, the family made the difficult decision to release both cheetahs. The bond was real. The love was genuine. But what happened that afternoon had made one thing completely clear. Some animals are not meant to be kept, no matter how much you care for them. Kojak the crocodile. An Indonesian family came across a crocodile and made the decision to take it in. They did not just clear out a corner of the yard for it either. They built a dedicated pool inside their compound specifically to house the animal, a construction project that no contractor in their neighborhood had ever been asked to carry out before. They named the crocodile Kojak, and from that point, it became a permanent fixture of their family life. Now, before we go any further, there is something important to understand about crocodiles. These animals have existed on this planet for over 200 million years. They survived the same extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs. And in all that time, they have not changed very much because they did not need to. They are already perfect at what they do. What they do is kill. Crocodiles are not trainable in any meaningful sense. They do not form emotional bonds with humans the way dogs, or even some reptiles can. They do not feel affection. They do not recognize kindness. What they do recognize is proximity, movement, and opportunity. A crocodile does not distinguish between a hand bringing it food and a hand that simply happens to be nearby. To a crocodile, both hands are just hands. A crocodile's bite force is the strongest of any animal ever measured on Earth, capable of exerting over 3,700 pounds of pressure per square inch. That is enough force to crush a car door. And crocodiles do not lunge wildly or give warning signs before they strike. They are ambush predators. They stay completely still for extended periods. And when they move with an explosive speed that gives their prey almost no time to react. And yet Kojak never attacked a single member of this family. The children played around it freely. Family members fed it by hand regularly. There was no professional training involved, no wildlife certification, and no safety protocol beyond basic trust. Kojak has not attacked anyone yet. But every crocodile expert who has heard this story will tell you that the words "not yet" are carrying a very heavy load in that sentence. Roxy and Mota, the baby elephant. Roxy and her team were near a river when they spotted something struggling in the water. A baby elephant had been caught in a flood, and it was losing the fight to stay above the surface. They pulled it out alive, but when they looked around for the rest of the herd, there was nothing. The flood had taken everything. The calf's entire family was gone, and this baby elephant was completely alone in the world. Roxy made the decision to take it home. She named it Mota, and from that first day, she gave it full access to her entire house. The kitchen, the bedroom, the rooftop, every single room without restriction. To most people, that sounds like an unusual arrangement. What Roxy understood was that this animal had just experienced a level of loss that would be difficult to explain even in human terms. Here's something most people do not know about elephants. They are among the most emotionally complex animals on the planet. They grieve. They experience separation anxiety. They form attachments that run so deep that losing a family member can send an elephant into a prolonged state of distress that looks remarkably similar to human trauma. Mota had not just lost one family member. It had lost all of them in one moment with no warning. And the only living thing it had left was Roxy. So Mota attached itself to her completely. It followed her everywhere she went inside that house. It refused to be separated from her. And as that attachment grew, so did the elephant. The destruction started almost immediately and never stopped. Mota worked through countless utensils, destabilized furniture, and gradually turned Roxy's home into something that barely resembled a house anymore. And this was still a baby. An elephant's physical strength increases every single week, which means that everything Roxy was managing in the early days was only a preview of what was coming. The most important thing to understand about this story is that Maioria is not being destructive out of aggression or malice. This animal simply does not know its own size or its own strength. It only knows that it lost everything in a flooding river, and the woman who pulled it out is the only family it has left. The combination of grief, attachment, and growing physical power is what makes this the most quietly overwhelming story on this entire list. Amanda Gray and Igmo, the iguana. Amanda Gray was living in Cape Coral, Florida, when she noticed an iguana egg hatching right outside her home. She watched it crack open, watched the tiny reptile pull itself out, and made the decision right there to take it in and raise it herself. She named it Igmo. It was small, it was harmless looking, and it needed care. To Amanda, it felt like the most natural thing in the world to do. For the first 2 years, everything was fine. Igmo grew steadily inside the home, eventually reaching 4 feet in length, and Amanda managed it without any serious problems. She fed it regularly, handled it often, and genuinely believed she understood this animal. The two of them had a routine, and that routine had never once given her a reason to be afraid. But iguanas go through significant hormonal changes as they reach full maturity. These changes alter the animal's behavior in ways that have nothing to do with how it was raised or how familiar it is with the people around it. The iguana that was calm and manageable for 2 years can become territorial, aggressive, and completely unpredictable almost overnight. And that is exactly what happened with Igmo. The first attack came without warning. Then, within the space of just 2 months, Igmo attacked Amanda a second time. The second attack happened during a routine feeding, the most ordinary moment imaginable. Igmo launched directly at her face, slashing her with its claws close enough to her eye that the outcome could have been far worse than it was. She needed stitches and ended up in hospital. What makes iguana attacks particularly serious is the nature of the damage they cause. Their claws open skin in a way that is deep and ragged, and their serrated teeth create wounds that are slow and difficult to heal. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to click on one of the cards on the screen to watch another video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.